Daniel was the kind of boy who always stood out in the university courtyard. His expensive clothes, polished shoes, and the confidence in his voice made him seem untouchable to ordinary students. People whispered about his father's fortune, about the luxury cars that sometimes dropped him off, about the life of privilege that separated him from the rest. He enjoyed the attention, carried himself with arrogance, and believed that the world belonged to him. Emily, on the other hand, was everything he was not. She came from a modest family, working nights at a cafe to pay for her medical textbooks, living in a small rented apartment, and dedicating every moment of her free time to studies. She was focused and ambitious, quietly dreaming of becoming a great surgeon one day. Her life was hard, but she carried her struggles with quiet dignity, never complaining, never asking for pity. Fate, however, often finds strange ways to bring two completely different worlds together. It was during a student gathering, a night of music and laughter, when Daniel first noticed Emily. Unlike the other girls who dressed to impress, she stood modestly in the corner, her simple dress doing little to hide her natural grace. He was intrigued, not because he cared, but because he enjoyed the idea of conquering someone who seemed different. Emily was surprised when he approached her, even more surprised when he continued to show interest. She had seen him from afar, never once imagining he would notice her. His charm was overwhelming, his attention intoxicating, and against her better judgment, she allowed herself to believe that perhaps he saw something special in her. Days turned into weeks, and their encounters grew more frequent. For Emily, it felt like a dream. For Daniel, it was simply another passing thrill. Their connection deepened just enough for her heart to become entangled, and she discovered she was pregnant. Her world spun out of control. Fear consumed her, but beneath it all there was hope. Hope that Daniel would stand by her. Hope that the man she had trusted would not abandon her. One evening, she gathered the courage to tell him. Her hands trembled as she whispered the words, her eyes searching his face for reassurance. But instead of kindness, she was met with cruelty. His laugh was sharp and cold, his words cutting deeper than any blade. "Did you really think that if you got yourself pregnant, I'd marry you? Don't be so naive." In that moment, the world she had carefully built around his attention collapsed. Tears burned her eyes, her heart cracked open, and the boy she thought she knew vanished before her. He turned away, his expression filled with disdain, leaving her standing alone, rejected and broken. Emily walked home that night under the weight of shame and despair. Her thoughts raced, her future felt uncertain, and yet within her, life was growing. She realized that she could not depend on anyone but herself. The whispers of classmates, the judgmental looks, the fear of raising a child alone, all of it loomed ahead of her. But something inside her refused to break. The girl who once leaned on hope decided to rise on her own strength. She worked harder than ever, juggling classes, part-time jobs, and the endless demands of pregnancy. Each day was a battle, each night a struggle, but slowly she grew stronger. The tears that once symbolized weakness became a silent promise to herself and to the child she carried. She would not let the cruelty of one man define her life. She would not allow her dreams to be stolen. Every insult, every doubt, every sleepless night became fuel for her determination. She continued her studies, her belly growing with each passing month, and while others whispered, she walked with her head held high. Her journey was lonely, but it was also transforming her into someone unstoppable. And though Daniel returned to his life of luxury, forgetting her as easily as he had discarded her, Emily's path was only beginning. The pain he had inflicted was slowly being forged into resilience, and while he believed she would fade into obscurity, she was quietly building the strength that would one day bring them face to face again in the most unexpected of ways. Emily's life after Daniel's betrayal was a battlefield, but it was also the foundation upon which her true strength was built. With every passing day, she faced challenges that would have broken someone less determined. Her mornings began before sunrise, Preparing for lectures and exams, her afternoons spent at the cafe where she worked long shifts on her feet, and her nights were consumed with study, all while carrying the weight of her growing child. The exhaustion was overwhelming, yet she refused to give up. When her classmates whispered behind her back, when professors raised eyebrows at her situation, she stayed focused on her goal of finishing medical school. Her child became her anchor, the reason she kept pushing forward. She promised herself that no matter how hard life became, she would create a future worthy of them both. The months passed, and the day came when Emily gave birth to a healthy baby boy. Holding him in her arms, she felt a love so deep it washed away the bitterness of her past. In his tiny face, she found new courage, new purpose, and the strength to endure whatever trials awaited her. Balancing motherhood with her demanding studies was almost impossible, yet she discovered within herself a resilience she never knew existed. Each sleepless night spent comforting her son was followed by mornings in the lecture hall, her eyes heavy, but her determination burning brighter than ever. Slowly but steadily, she earned respect from those who once doubted her. Her professors began to notice her dedication. Her classmates could not ignore her brilliance, and step by step, she carved her place in the world of medicine. As the years rolled on, Emily entered residency, a grueling test of endurance that pushed even the strongest to their limits. Long nights in hospitals, endless hours in the operating room, the constant pressure to make life or death decisions, and she endured it all while raising her child. Her boy grew alongside her career, watching his mother fight battles with courage, never realizing how much she had sacrificed to give him a better life. Emily built her reputation on skill and compassion. Patients trusted her steady hands, colleagues admired her resilience, and slowly she began to rise in her field. She did not allow herself to dwell on Daniel, though memories of his cruelty sometimes echoed in the back of her mind. Instead, she poured her energy into becoming the surgeon she had always dreamed of being. Daniel, meanwhile, lived his life untouched by struggle. Wealth shielded him from consequences, and arrogance continued to guide his choices. He enjoyed success in business, indulged in fleeting relationships, and never once paused to consider the girl he had once cast aside. To him, Emily was nothing more than a forgotten mistake, a shadow from his past erased by his pride. But fate does not erase so easily. It waits patiently, turning the wheel until the moment arrives when the past and present collide. And for Emily and Daniel, that moment was approaching, quietly but inevitably. One morning, as Emily prepared for a complex surgery, she reviewed the patient's chart with her usual calm focus. Her eyes scanned the details, the medical history, the notes from other doctors, until her gaze fell on the name written in bold letters. Daniel Reed. For a moment, her breath caught in her throat. Time seemed to stop as the letters burned into her mind. The same Daniel who had shattered her world years ago, the man who had abandoned her with cruel words, now lay on the hospital bed, awaiting her scalpel. The irony was staggering. Memories surged within her, but she forced herself to breathe, to remain composed. She was no longer the vulnerable student he had mocked. She was Dr. Emily Carter, a skilled surgeon trusted with saving lives, and now his life was in her hands. When she entered the pre-operative room, Daniel's eyes met hers, and recognition struck instantly. His face paled, his confidence faltered, and for the first time in years, he felt truly powerless. She stood above him, calm and professional, her expression giving nothing away. He opened his mouth to speak, but the words died before they could form. He was no longer the arrogant young man who held power over her. Instead, he was vulnerable, exposed, and entirely at her mercy. Emily simply adjusted her gloves, her voice steady and controlled. "We'll begin shortly. You'll be fine." There was no trace of bitterness, no anger in her tone, only the quiet strength of a woman who had endured pain and risen above it. In that moment, Daniel realized that the girl he had once mocked had transformed into someone far greater than he had ever imagined. And as the operating room prepared for the procedure, the weight of the past pressed heavily upon them both, setting the stage for the reckoning that was about to unfold. The operating room filled with the low hum of machines and the steady rhythm of monitors. Emily stood at the head of the table, her surgical mask hiding the emotions that churned deep within her. Around her, the team prepared in silence, trusting her leadership, unaware of the storm that lay hidden in the history between surgeon and patient. Daniel's eyes flickered nervously before the anesthesia took hold, and for the briefest moment Emily saw fear in the man who once carried only arrogance. Then his eyes closed, and he surrendered completely to her hands. With precise movements, she began the procedure. Every incision, every adjustment, every decision was executed with the calm mastery she had spent years cultivating. Yet beneath her composure, memories whispered like ghosts. The night he laughed at her tears, the words that had broken her spirit, the loneliness she had endured. She could feel the weight of all those years pressing against her chest, but she did not falter. The scalpel in her hand was not an instrument of vengeance. It was a symbol of her victory over the cruelty of her past. Hours passed, each second a reminder of the life that hung in the balance. Her team moved in sync with her commands, trusting her completely, and when the final sutures were placed, the surgery concluded in success. Daniel's life had been saved by the very woman he once dismissed as nothing. When he awoke in recovery, his first sight was Emily standing at the foot of his bed, her arms crossed lightly, her gaze unreadable. Shame flushed through him as memories crashed back in brutal clarity. He opened his mouth, his voice weak and unsteady. Emily. The name slipped out, heavy with regret. She met his eyes, and for a long moment, silence filled the room. Then she spoke, her tone calm and professional, free of anger, yet carrying the weight of unspoken truth. The surgery was successful. You'll recover with time. Follow the instructions, and you'll be fine. There was no trace of personal emotion in her words, nothing to suggest the history they shared. She had chosen her role as a doctor, not as a woman wronged. Daniel struggled to form more words, but his throat tightened. He wanted to apologize, to explain, to plead, but he saw in her steady gaze that she did not need his remorse. She had built a life without him, stronger than anything he could ever give. She no longer sought closure from him. She had created it herself. Days turned into weeks as Daniel recovered, each moment haunted by the knowledge that his life had been in the hands of the woman he had betrayed. He thought of her strength, her achievements, her quiet dignity, and he realized with painful clarity that she had become everything he was not. She had risen through hardship, while he had coasted on privilege. The imbalance was undeniable. Emily, meanwhile, returned to her work as though nothing had happened. For her, saving his life was not an act of mercy toward him, but a fulfillment of the oath she had sworn. She did not gloat. She did not seek revenge. She simply moved forward, leaving him behind, just as he had once left her. The final time their eyes met, as he was discharged from the hospital, he tried to speak once more. Emily, I'm sorry. For everything. I was wrong. His voice shook, his pride crumbling under the weight of honesty he had avoided his entire life. But Emily only offered a small, distant smile. Take care of yourself, she said softly, and then she turned away. In that moment, Daniel understood the depth of his loss. Not the loss of her forgiveness, but the loss of ever being part of the extraordinary life she had built. She had surpassed him, not with wealth, not with arrogance, but with resilience and grace. Walking out of the hospital into the bright sunlight, Emily felt a calm she had never known before. She had faced the man who had once broken her, and she realized he no longer held any power over her. Her life was her own, her strength undeniable, her future limitless. The chapter of pain had closed, and what remained was the triumph of survival, the quiet victory of a woman who refused to be destroyed. Daniel, left in the shadows of his regret, carried the weight of a truth he could never escape. The girl he had once cast aside had saved his life, not just with her hands, but with her refusal to become bitter like him. And while he would forever live with the memory of his cruelty, Emily walked forward free, her heart unchained, her destiny entirely her own.